Mr. Speaker, I yield 5 minutes to the author of this bill, Mr. Young from Iowa.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank both my colleagues from Texas for their support of this measure. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of my bipartisan bill, H.R. 2905, the Justice for Victims of IRS Scams and Identity Theft Act of 2018. Scams and identity theft are increasingly complex and growing problems. Americans lose billions of dollars to criminals. My colleague called them con artists. That's what they are, executing identity theft and fraud each year. Many in the 3rd District of Iowa have spoken to me about their fear of having their identity, bank or credit card numbers, and other personal information stolen. Mr. Speaker, imagine getting a call from your bank or credit card company explaining your information has been stolen. Or imagine having a federal agent knock on your door because someone stole your name, social security number, or banking information. This reality can turn an individual's and a family's world upside down. Millions of Americans have gotten that call, and many have lost everything because of identity theft. The Justice for Victims of IRS Scams and Identity Theft Act of 2018 requires the Attorney General and Treasury Secretary to create and submit reports to Congress about identity theft and fraud across the United States. In 2016, the Inspector General at the Treasury for Tax Administration, Russell George, said Americans submit up to 14,000 complaints about IRS impersonation scams every week. He also said IRS impersonation scams were the largest, most pervasive impersonation scam in the history of the agency. This is serious. These scams are indiscriminate and can impact any person at any time. The report submitted to Congress by the Attorney General as a result of my bill, this bipartisan bill, will contain the number of defendants referred to the Department of Justice for identity theft and fraud, a map of the United States which shows where cases were referred from, and the rate of conviction for cases prosecuted. This bill also recommends the Attorney General provide information on how to improve collaboration with other federal agencies and discuss trends in identity theft and fraud cases. The Department of Justice should suggest what we can do to deter criminals and prevent identity theft from happening. The report from the Treasury Secretary will contain what efforts the Secretary has undertaken in the prosecution of IRS impersonation cases and recommendations for resources needed to assist victims of these crimes. As the founder of the bipartisan task force to combat identity theft and fraud, I've compiled helpful resources to ensure all Iowans and Americans have the tools and resources they need to stay informed and protected from these scams. And I know my colleagues do this as well for their constituents. The reports from the Attorney General and Treasury Secretary will help Americans protect themselves and give members of Congress the tools we need to better protect our bosses, our constituents. Mr. Speaker, fighting these criminals starts with knowing what's out there and being as prepared as possible, which is why I encourage my colleagues to join me in support of this bipartisan bill.